Now, Brother Tony has organised some sort of a formation segment or a tour. So in that case,
Yeah.
I'll hand over to Brother Tony.
Thank you very much, Brother Jerry. Yeah, you asked me that to do something last exec Zoom meeting we had, and I thought, scratching my head here, I was like, what am I going to talk about? And I'm thinking, what I might talk about? How to make good red wine, hey? What do you think?
Give me a sec, bud. I'll go get some.
Hang on. And then I thought it is God's nectar, so I might as well. I've just got 10 steps. I'll make it quick. I know there's a lot of people interested about it. I know a lot of people have probably tried to do a home brewer at home, but in actual fact, it is very hard to make a good red wine at home. So we'll start with step one. Okay. Step one, everything's got to be clean and sterilized. If you don't have clean and sterilized equipment, your wine is very easy to spoil. I use a lot of sulfate. I use stainless steel vats and fermenters. With stainless steel, it's very easy to clean the bacteria and the residual on the stainless steel. I know probably Brother Andrew knows everything's probably stainless steel where you are at work, so it's a lot easier to clean.
It's everything what I do. Yeah.
Before we go too far, Brother Tony, well, how do you sterilise your grapes?
No, I'll tell you in a minute.
Okay.
I'll tell you in a minute. So it's very important. This is why when you try to make something like this at home, it's very easy to spoil because the season's got to be good, weather-wise, climate. It all depends on our climate here in Australia, and sometimes it can be pretty harsh. Like a few years ago, we had those fires, and it affected a lot of wineries, vineyards, and they couldn't sell their grapes because the actual grapes had that smoky flavour, and they had to be all thrown out or back into the earth, and that's why like everything should be picked at about 18 to 20% sugar. And that's where you can harvest a good grape when it's got to be tested. If it's not tested, then you're just guessing. So the less sugar it has, it won't ferment later on in the period. So it's very important between 18 to 20 to 24. If you can get a grape that's got about 24% sugar in it, you're going to get a very strong wine, and you're going to get a good, fulsome, strong wine. So that's important. So when you actually get the grapes delivered from the farm, and that's what I usually do as brewing my own at home. I actually I've got a farm in Heathcote up north there, and he tests the sugar level, he tests the pH. As soon as that's right, he'll give me a call, and then he'll deliver it that day, and then they'll come to my place, and I actually crush it that day. So as soon as it's picked from the vine, and it comes to my place. I mean, last year, actually the start of this year in June, they actually arrived at my place at 10 o'clock at night, and I actually crushed them at 10 o'clock at night. I didn't finish till about 2 in the morning, but it is you get the full body, the actual stalks, everything's green, and to tell you the truth, this year, because it's all about the pH level. I'll talk to you about the pH level in a moment. I'm actually fortunate that I have got a pH meter here, and I'll just show you. I mean, you really, I can't. You probably can't see it. I would have loved to be face to face with you guys at the moment, but that's the actual pH meter, right? And that tells me the pH of the. I dip that prod into a test tube. Into the test tube. So that test tube, I dip that into wine, and if that pH is reading between 3.1 and 3.5, you don't have to add no tartaric acid. You don't have to add no other stuff for your wine, because in actual fact, vineyards and wineries and things, you really, they've got people employed with white suits and white bags to go around and fix their wine to that pH. So a great wine. And that's good, Andrew. Yeah, a bit of background. That's great. The actual can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, keep going.
All right. Is the actual all these wineries, they've got all these they're like professors and doctors, and they actually come around with white suits, white bags, and they actually control the pH. Where if the pH is over 3.4, then what happens then? We add tartaric acid. Now, that's one thing a home brewer doesn't like to do is add chemicals and acids and all this other potassium and there's a lot of things you can add to make sure that wine hits that 3.1 to 3.4. That's the perfect wine. And like I said, I'm fortunate this year that my wines now at this moment is about 3.6, which is fantastic. I've added no tartaric, no chemicals to it. So you know, I wish I was there in face with you, because I have got a bottle here, and I will open it in front of you, the brothers. But once you get the grapes at home, you crush them, you leave them in a fermenter in stainless steel. I've got 1,000 litre tank. You leave it there between 4 to 7 days, depending on the Beaumet. That's another meter. That everything's, you know, it goes up to 13. There's another Beaumeter. They're like, and you put them in test tubes. You get a bit of sample of the wine. The Beaumeter starts at about 12, and when the fermentation progress starts, it actually has got to reach down to 0, and that's between the day you crush it, and it could take up to 4 days to 7 days. I've left mine for about 7 days this year, and it went down to 0. Once it goes down to 0, then you've got no problems later on when you do bottle them, because what happens if you don't go to 0, the actual wine is still fermenting. So it's like a champagne. If you bottle it, it'll actually explode because it's not really fermented. So
Tony,
that's
what needs
yes.
to go to 0?
The Beaumet, which is when the actual grape starts to ferment, it actually eats away at the sugar in the actual in the juice and the must. So that's very important. But within those 4 to 7 days, you've actually have to plunge the must and the actual juice 3 times a day. So what happens? You've got to keep everything moist. If you don't do that, then you get a bit of oxidation, because the must always rises to the top of the barrel, the fermenter, and if you dry that out, it'll actually spoil your wine. So it's very important. So you've got to do that 3 times a day within the next 7 days, and after that, you actually press it. This is, I mean, in those 4 days, they're called a starter pack, where you can add potassium metasulfite that kills the wild yeast in the actual grape, because you don't want that wild yeast in the grape. You actually add that potassium to kill the wild yeast, because you don't want it, because it keeps fermenting. That's why there's a lot of moonshine you can make with grapes, because it just keeps fermenting. And if you don't kill the yeast, you'll have problems. And then we add a natural yeast, so because it's still got to ferment. You've got to use up all the sugar, like I said, at 18%. You've got to get that. You've got to ferment all that sugar, because the higher the sugar level, the higher the alcohol level. And so then it's called a starter pack. There's a shop on Wellington Road. If you're keen, I mean, you can. If you're interested, you can start with 17 kilos of grapes. You can get a home starter kit. You can get it at home maker there at on Wellington Road, and it is fantastic, especially when it turns out great. Now, like I said, I've added the yeast with that 7 days. I've added for the fermentation, and then it's very important you do actually plunge it, and you got to keep everything moist. Now, when it's ready to be taken out, so this is the time. This is like step 5. I'm nearly finished my presentation, so I know. Am I all right with time? Yeah. Okay. So pressing. So once that bone gets to 0, and then, have you ever seen a press, or the brothers are familiar with a press? It's made out of wood. A lot of people press olives in it. Wine is good. So what you do, you press all the must, right? The must and the juice, and you filter it. That's a press. Well done, Brother Andrew. That's a press, and you put it in there, and you get all the juice out, and you try to get all that sediment out, and you put that in a fermenter. That's the Beaumet. He's checking the Beaumet, and he's checking all those levels, make sure it's all right. It goes down to 0. So when that's all up and going, then you let it rest for a month. In a like a still, I've actually got a stainless steel 500 litre tank with a car tire in it, and with a breather, and I let that sit for about a month, and in that month I do check the pH. I make sure that that level is at 3.5 or under. If not, then I'm in trouble, because I don't like to add any tartaric acid. So when that's done, then I like to rack it after that month. When you rack, you actually take the wine out. You try not to disturb underneath the actual stainless steel thing. You actually pump it out, because there's a lot of sediment that's come from the there's a lot of sediment in there, and you've got to be careful how you I think that's the one on the left there. I think it's a white wine. I don't know what he's doing there.
Yeah, that's a white. That's a white.
Yeah. So, but what I like to do is rack it about 3 times, and the more you rack the wine, the more clearer it gets. And this is the time where you can add tannins. This is when you can add oak staffs, chips, to acquire your taste. And we sort of do it in June.
What's racking, Tony?
Racking is when you take it out of one stainless steel container and you put it into another one, and you clean the original one with all the sediment.
Aren't you adding oxygen to everything, like oxidized?
No, it's not, because it's all concealed. We try to do that. We try to do that with minimal time whatsoever, and that's quite right there, brother Jerry. It can actually spoil pretty quick, a red wine, especially done at home. The bad thing about red wine is when you oxidize it, it spoils very quickly. So the quicker you can get it from one keg to another keg, the better. So I use a pump. So it's minimal airage. But at the start, the first 2 times of racking, it's quite good to give it a bit of air. So what you do, you actually it loosens up all. If there is a little bit of fermentation still in there, any sugar and stuff like that, it actually sort of kills it. So that's a good thing. Then what I like to do, this is a bottle of red. Okay, I mean, I love a drink, and like I said to you, it's God's nectar. But any wine that's a year old to 5 years old, I suggest aerators. Everybody know what an aerator is. So what this does, you pour the wine into the top here, and it actually aerates the wine as it goes into your glass. That's one type. There's other types like I'm holding here. Right, so that actually goes on the end of the bottle. So you put that at the end of the bottle, and a great tumbler is a very open tumbler, and that's how you can really see the color of the wine. You can see the and then what it does, see those bubbles on top? Yeah, I know it's very hard to see a bubble, but I would have loved to be at St. Gerard's this evening, because I've got a couple of these bottles and it would have been a nice taste test of a bit of my home brew this evening. But it's all about twirling it with a wide tumbler. Twirling it, it makes that aroma come out of the wine, and like I said, between especially a very young wine, it's got to aerate. And this is when air is very good for a new wine. After it's been in a closed container for 6 months, and June is done. November, December, you should be drinking your first brew. But
what vintage is that then, Tony?
This is June this year.
Okay.
This is June this year. So this is step 9. This is when you bottle everything, and then you enjoy it. I mean, I don't know if you can see the color there. This is a Shiraz. Now, there's all different types of reds. I mean, Shiraz, Cabernet, Merlot. Usually a Shiraz will come good in a place like Heathcote, Mildura, because they need a hotter climate. Merlot, a Cab, a bit more down south, like even Peninsula has a good Merlot and a nice grape, and whatever the wine's called, that's the actual grape. Riesling, Cab Sav, but it all depends where it is, though. You can't get a good Cab Sav in the Yarra Valley, or you can't get a really good one, Shiraz in the Yarra Valley, because it's too cold. So, you've got to head for up north. I'm actually going to dry in the mouth now. I'm going to have a taste of this, okay?
Right. That's step 10.
That's step 10. This is step 10, and this is salute. That's the end of my talk. Thanks, Brother Jerry.
Thank you, Brother Tony. That was very good.
Brother Jerry, Brother Tony brought up the pressing process. Now, he talked about the presser, which you can see on the screen there. I have one of those myself as well. It's been in the family for about 50 years. And last time I used it was about 5 years ago, but I do intend on using it again. Just to show what briefly what Brother Tony was talking about. So when you've let the wine boil for that week or whatever, so that wine is now ready to press. So you put that in. Now most of the juice goes straight through, which is what you're seeing, and that gets put in bottles or drums or whatever right away to ferment. So that's all ready.
But that first press, there's a lot of sediment in it, so that's why it's the first racking time after a month. You'll get a lot of sediment at the bottom of the tank, and that's very important. You've got to clear that, or else it starts to oxidize with the actual wine. It actually turns the wine. So that's why racking is a good thing about clearing all that sediment.
Yeah. So this is the actual so this is the pressing process. Now what you're seeing this guy doing is he's got a big lever here and he's moving it back and forth. You see that he's moving back and forth. Now what's happening is inside that lever, now I'll pause it where it's here. So inside this lever, so it's going back and forth. That's on a screw. That's on a thread, a big thread. Now in this mechanism, you've got a wheel. You've got the wheel that goes through that's threaded, that goes through the thread. Now when he's moving back and forth, there are two pins that push that wheel. So when you move it to one end, it moves the wheel forward one bit, and then then one pin clicks in. Then he goes back, and then that one pushes it forward again. So that's how it's being able. So what's happening is you've got the thread. So you've got this moving back and forth. That's pushing two pins. That's turning that around. So that's actually going. So that's how they're able to press. There are actually two big wooden plates that are pressing on the grapes, and then you've got other blocks to pack it up and push it down as you go along. So the more you press it, so what's happening here, he's by doing back and forth, he's actually bringing it down to press. Now at the end, I think you saw it here. Yeah, here we go. It'll come up in a second. So here, once you've pressed it all, you've got what's left over, the rest of the grapes and the must and whatnot. Now,
and those skins and that, what's left in that, I use that to do homebrew grappa. So we can use that. That could be another talk for another year. Okay.
The funny thing, actually, what's interesting is with that, you think that's it. You've gotten all the juice out of it. You can actually undo that, pull that out, get rid of all the stems and everything, and you can actually repress that again. And you do actually get a little bit out of it. Whether it's worth all the effort to do it again, sometimes it's up for debate, but you can actually get a bit of juice. But as Tony has said, he uses that to make his grappa.
Yeah,
isn't that where the word grappa comes from? The grapes, the skins of the grapes.
Right. Yeah, the skin. Yeah, the must.
And then you just distill that. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, and I like to press it just once, and then because I still need it juicy for once I ferment that and boil that to make my home brew. So you need it moist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that, Tony. Very interesting talk. Hope you enjoy your wine there.
Oh, mate, I tell you what, it's a beautiful drop. It is a nice drop. I wish.
I know. You wish you could share it.
Yeah, I was going to bring a few bottles around and have everybody a taste test. But I tell you what, it's been a good year this year.
It's a very important tradition for a lot of Italian ethnic particularly Italian families. I know, as I say, my family's been doing it for a very long time. I've been involved with making the wine with my family for as far back as I can remember. And even, like I said, a couple of years ago, I did it myself because I've had all the equipment here, and I did it myself a couple of times. It wasn't too bad, but it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of effort. It is a lot of work. As Tony said, it's probably about a week or two in the making, just to do the pressing and that, crushing, pressing, and then you got months of having to tend to it. And
Yes.
making.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So, Brother Tony, where do you get the grapes from?
Heathcote. I've got a contact in Heathcote, and that's that I've been doing the last 2 years. I've been doing a Shiraz.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you do any of the picking, or you just buy?
No, well, I've actually got the farmer. He will actually pick it when it's time to pick, and the pH is there, the sugar levels are there, and he'll pick it that day, and it'll come to my place that day.
So you're not the only client he's got, I presume.
No. Yeah, sometimes when we're high and mighty in China had all the rights away with all our wine, because everything's exported out to China, and the big wineries, you've got no chance. But I'm fortunate to have a little bit of a contact. It's called Brian. It's actually it's called you can look it up, the Shiraz Republic in Heathcote. It's not a big winery, but it's he's got some great grapes there.
So what's happening now that China's not taking all the wine?
Well, we've got an opportunity to get as much as we want here, and it's great for
Tony's obviously helping out. He's buying it.
Yeah. I've actually got 470 litres at the moment in the vat. So
we should be able to get some good wine at reasonable prices now.
well,
that's
another thing. But the government loves putting taxes on taxes with wines and that. You find, but you can get some really good specials now at Dan Murphy's. You can get a good bottle of red for about $15, and it's it comes from Heathcote. You get it from South Adelaide, the Barossa Valley. If you're looking for a good red, you can get them for under 20 too. But I like my own brew where I know there's nothing added in it.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
All right, we